Hello, how are you, Ayesha? Hi, I'm very good. Thank you for coming today. Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here. How are you feeling? Yeah, not too bad. I mean, it seems like this last year has luckily gone quite quickly, but obviously because of COVID, it's been quite awful. Are you feeling nervous about the interview? No, I'm not. Is there sound on it? No, there's no sound. So how are you feeling? Are you feeling nervous to be here today? Well, a little. I mean, I know you sent me the list of questions. I might have forgotten some of them, but I've tried my best, but there might be something I've missed. Oh, don't worry. We'll just have a chat and we'll try and make it as smooth as possible, okay? No problem. So, first, tell me about yourself. Were you born deaf? Do you have family members who are deaf? Were you born here in the UK or where were you born? Tell me a bit about yourself. Okay, so my name's Naima Suge and I'm 25 now. I'm going to be 26 this year. And I was born in Africa. And that was in Somalia. Oh, do you have a sign for Somalia? No, I think I've seen some before, maybe a few years ago, like this, or other signs, but I'm not sure. I don't use it. But that was where I was born in Africa. And I grew up and lived there until I was about 6. And that was then when I moved to the UK. Because my mum thought really it'd be best to come here, that I'd have a better chance at education and that I could kind of learn, more independence. Because really, it's quite poor in Africa. There's not very good education, not a lot of access to food or clothing. And obviously it's really hard then for deaf people as well. So that was when my mum decided it'd be better to be moved here to the UK. So that was back in 2002. That was just before my 7th birthday that we moved here. And really, when I arrived in the UK, I didn't really have any idea that I was deaf. I went to Middleton Primary School and the teacher said to me, "Oh, you're deaf." But at that point, I didn't really know what it meant, to be deaf. And she said, you can't hear the sounds around you and that means that you're deaf. And I'd never had any kind of experience from that before. I've never known it or anything. So when I grew up a little bit more, I did ask my mum, was I born deaf or was I the only one that was deaf? And I asked my sister, Amira, too. And she said, no, you were born hearing. And so I asked then, how did I become deaf if I wasn't born deaf? And they said, yeah, no, you were born hearing. And so I asked them more about how I became deaf. And they said it was through an illness. Oh my goodness, I didn't know. Yeah, so that was when I was 18 months. And I think my mum tried to call my name and she was saying, Naima, repeatedly. But obviously I didn't have any response. And my mum panicked a little bit. But at that point we were in Africa and she took me to a doctor. And I think they said it was meningitis. But really, it was lucky because in Africa we didn't have any kind of treatment or any medicine for that. So I was lucky to have survived it. But then when we moved to the UK, that was partly so that I had better education, as a deaf student. Oh my goodness. I mean, I've known you for so many years and I never knew that you were born hearing and had become deaf later on from being ill from meningitis. Wow. Yeah, no, that was when I was 18 months. So before that I was hearing fine and, I was kind of normal. There wasn't a problem. And then it was after I was 18 months, I became really ill. So yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I think at that time my mum kind of panicked because in Africa there wasn't really any deaf people around. My mum didn't have any kind of awareness about deafness or how we could learn. But then moving to the UK, I could kind of access education, learn how to sign and lip read because my mum really hadn't come across anybody deaf before. But when I moved here, I met a lady called Margot and she basically taught my mum a lot about deaf people, how to communicate, how to help me learn, talked about sign language. And I think at that point she taught me a lot of finger spelling, maths, and how to use, signs, basic signs really, like level 1, how old I am, what I like, different things, kind of sports and things like that. Oh, so just a few basic signs really. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, before that I didn't have any kind of idea that I was deaf. I just knew nothing about being deaf. So when I arrived here, Margot was the first person to teach me. And then as I grew up, obviously, I understood more and more about deafness, and I kind of identify as deaf now as I've grown up. But yeah, that was kind of the first school I went to. Oh, wow. So do you have any memories of Africa? No, I have no memories at all of being in Africa. I think I've not met a lot of my family members from Africa. Some are in America and some are in Sweden. And then I've also got some families in Holland. Do you have a sign for Holland? Yeah, it's this, Holland. Yeah, so I've really not met a lot of my family members. I've never met them. I only met a few of my African family members in 2005. And I met my grandma. And I met my sister. And my sister and my brother and my dad all arrived here in 2006. But I think I've met, uncles and nieces in Africa. But since 2005, since going there, I've not seen any of my family members, my extended family, really at all. So I did meet my grandma and my uncle and brother and sister, but since then I've not really seen any of the extended family members. Oh, wow, so that's amazing. So when did you move here? Was it just with you and your mum? Yes, that was me and my mum and my sister Amira in 2002. And then later on, my dad, my brother and my sister came. So that was in 2006, and it just worked better financially. So that was a decision they made for first me and my sister Amira to move here with my mum in 2002, and then later for the rest of the family, for my dad, my brother and my other sister, to then move here because it was the best way, just financially really, for the family. Oh, wow. So at that point you were 6, is that right, when you moved from Africa? Yeah, I think it was. I think it was just before my 7th birthday. So I think it was in October 2002. So first I arrived in London. And I think we spent some time in a family member's house. I can't remember. Maybe it might have been my uncle or nephew who's now moved to Birmingham. I'm not really sure. It feels like such a long time ago. I'm not very good at remembering people's names either. But I remember, I've looked through letters since then about my arrival to the UK. And it said I arrived in 2002 in London before moving to Peterborough. Oh, wow. So in Africa, did you have any nursery or schooling or anything? No, nothing. I mean, I say nothing. I've got some pictures from my very early childhood when I was a baby, maybe when I was 4 or 5. I've got a few pictures that my mum's got, but I can't really remember anything, about nursery or school or anything like that. Oh, wow. So that means when you moved here to the UK, that was the first time that you went to any school. Was that Middleton School that you first went to? Yeah, so before I went to Middleton School, it was strange. So when I arrived here in the UK, you know how clothes change? There's kind of different... Oh, do you mean from Africa to the UK there's differences? I mean, from 2002 to now, there's kind of different trends and phones change and lots of clothing changes. So when I first arrived here, I thought it was America because I just remember my sister showing me a photo, and I think it was before primary school, and I thought, oh yeah, that must be in America. And I think when I got older, I asked my sister, oh, that photograph that we've spoken about, that was in America? And she said, what? No, it was the UK. And I remember thinking how strange that must have been because the clothes were so different. I thought it was America, but it wasn't. It was the UK. But obviously, at that point, I was quite young. I didn't really know much about the world, really. I didn't know the differences between UK and America. So, yeah, that was interesting. Oh, brilliant. So when you first went to Middleton Primary School, how did you feel? Did you feel nervous or what did you feel? Yeah, I mean, I was pretty nervous because, I was quite isolated. I mean, I was one of the only black students and there was lots of white students around. I was the only deaf student and lots of other students were hearing. So I remember, it would have been difficult to make relationships at school, and some of the interpreters and CSWs. I've got a photo. Would you mind if I bring it and show you? No, go for it. So you can see Rose here, who's one of my TAs. That's her. And this lady, Mrs. Powell. And then my interpreter was stood here. So that was when I arrived at Middleton School. I was there from year 1 up until year 6. So she taught me English and maths and all the different subjects, really. And I learned about, being deaf and learnt BSL, and that was at Middleton Primary School before moving. Oh, that's a lovely photo. So just to go back a little bit, you said about, obviously you're deaf. Do you have hearing aids or implants? I used to have hearing aids, but I didn't really hear a lot, just kind of environmental sounds. And I didn't really feel that there was any difference. So when I was a bit older, I changed to have an implant, and that was in 2011. Oh, wow, do you feel that's better? No, I mean, for me, I'm not really keen on it. I get quite stressed sometimes, it's too noisy, and it's difficult, they said it would try and help my speech and my communication, and my family have tried to kind of teach me how to speak and how to put words together and say different words, but it becomes really stressful, and I don't understand the point, really, because I don't really want my implant. I'm quite proud of just being deaf, so for me, I didn't really want my implant, and I had a lot of pressure to wear it. I think a lot of people kind of thought that it was like a quick fix that I'd become hearing after that, but I've always had a lot of pressure to wear my implants and to try and improve that communication, but really I don't feel it's for me. I don't really like it, but possibly in the future, it might help me more at work or something like that, but at the moment I'm okay without them. Yeah, I understand that. I think maybe some people don't understand, about a lot about deafness. Maybe they just think an implant will fix everything, it will become hearing. Yeah, I think that's definitely like my mum thought. When we went to the doctors at the time, they said, it will help her become hearing. You just need to practice a lot and practice how to speak and how to listen to different voices. And I think my mum just thought, oh, brilliant, this is it, we'll get one and it will help and it'll just make her hearing. But I think she probably thought, that having a deaf child meant that there'd be more problems for me to face, so she thought that an implant would kind of fix that and that it'd teach me how to speak, have my own voice. But I've said to her, I don't really want to. I'm quite proud of being deaf and using BSL. It's part of my personality, my identity. I don't really want to change that. I'm happy as me. I'm happy being deaf, and I don't want to change to being hearing. Oh, wow. So what about your dad or your brothers and sisters? Were they helpful, or did they have similar views to your mum? No, I think my dad and my brother, I think they're all fine. I think mostly it was my mum. She kind of wanted me to be hearing because she'd not had any experience with deaf people before. I was the first person. I was deaf from a very young age. Wow. So do you feel like she's still, there's lots to kind of learn? Yeah, definitely. So tell me a bit about your school experience. So did you meet more deaf students there in the end? What was your experience like in education, and did you have, TAs or teaching assistants with you? Did you find it difficult, or did you have to rely on lip reading a lot? How did you kind of make friends? Tell me. Yes, I mean, from Middleton School to Jack Hunt School, there was definitely differences. And I was obviously learning lots of different topics, and I did have TAs with me, but I also met with the teacher of the deaf. And I did start to meet deaf people in year 7, and I remember feeling really nervous because I was moving from Middleton School to Jack Hunt, and it felt very, very big, and it felt like there was lots of students suddenly. And I remember meeting my TA, who was Mrs. Baker, And we went around and she showed me the school and like different rooms. And obviously Middleton was very small, but Jack Hunt School, it seemed lots larger. And they had kind of different rooms for science and different topics. And it just made me really nervous looking around. But I did meet more deaf people there, obviously you, and, you know, lots of the other students that I met. And also, you know, there are a lot more TAs in Jack Hunt as well. And then in college, really, I didn't have kind of a good connection with the TAs or, you know, other hearing people. Lots of the deaf students in college kind of were relying on finger spelling, or the CSWs might kind of ask me to sign to the class and teach a little bit of BSL. But I felt really nervous about that because I was the only deaf person and we had lots of kind of hearing students looking at me, and I'd kind of say, yeah, no, hello, my name is Naima in sign language. But I definitely remember that feeling of nervousness. But meeting the first kind of deaf students in small groups in Middleton, it was fine. But I do remember feeling very nervous going to Jack Hunt School. Oh, wow. So in Middleton School, did you not meet any deaf students? I met a few, but not really at Middleton School. I think mostly it was Jack Hunt when we'd go to lunch, and then obviously we'd go out to lessons. Oh, brilliant. So what were lessons like? What support did you have with communication? Can you tell me a bit about that? Yeah, I mean, it's been difficult to communicate throughout school because English has been very difficult. Maths was really a struggle for me. And I remember falling behind and had to use the TAs to support me. And I did fail quite a lot. And especially because my grammar wasn't always that good and I wasn't very good with maths. And I became really, really stressed quite easily. It's always very, very difficult to communicate with different subjects. And so, for example, like with PE, I loved football because I can understand it easily and it was easy to follow, and cooking was quite good, and even art really. But I remember science and English, maths and DT, and, you know, they were really quite tricky. Oh, wow. So you liked PE. What were the other subjects you liked? I liked cooking class and I liked art a little bit. So do you think that's probably because they're more visual subjects? You know, English is quite wordy, is that right? Yeah, 100%, definitely. I didn't understand a lot of what was going on, and I had to try a lot to try and keep up and learn, use online resources. But, you know, lots of the subjects were very, very difficult. And I remember, you know, I failed quite a lot, and trying to ask in-depth questions were tricky. And I remember the teachers were trying to, you know, teach me, or, you know, the TAs were trying to explain to the teachers about deaf awareness. And really, there was just a lot of information that I didn't understand very well. Wow, so was that at Middleton and Jack Hunt School? Did you feel they were relatively deaf aware or not? I think Jack Hunt School was more deaf aware, yeah. I mean, they had a lot more deaf students, but Middleton, really, I mean, I had just arrived from Africa as well. I'd not lived here very long at all. But then, you know, I was the only one, so then we only had one TA, so we weren't kind of swapping around. It was just one TA and me with me all day. Oh, wow. So say, for example, if there were more deaf students going to Middleton Primary School, what could the school have done differently? Oh, sorry, what do you mean by that? So do you have any advice or any tips that you would give to the school that you'd like to help them improve to become more deaf aware? how would they best support young deaf students? I think really the most important thing is coming from the teachers. You know, there might be a few students that are born deaf, or even if they're born hearing and later become deaf. I think teachers should be deaf aware and know what it means, know how to help with different things, asking for TAs to support, writing things down, making things more visual, using books, for example. And I think having that little bit of deaf awareness with the teachers would be brilliant. Okay, so you said Jack Hunt School was more deaf aware. Is there anything more that they could do to improve, do you think? I think a few more skills, maybe kind of preparation for things, and also helping, you know, some students when they're failing and to kind of support them through that. You know, it's the exams really that's difficult. So having some preparation for the exams. Oh, yeah, I can understand that. So it's just the English in the exam papers, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's lots and lots of English in the exam papers. And when the TA is trying to explain what it's saying to make sure that I understand it. But obviously in the exam rooms, you're actually just by yourself. So the TAs are doing their best beforehand. But yeah, the exams themselves were very, very difficult. Yeah, I can imagine. And obviously in the exam papers, there's lots of difficult words, aren't there, that, you know, kind of become more complex. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd spend a lot of time looking at a word and thinking, I don't know what that means, but I can't ask, you know, someone what that means or to translate that. I wasn't allowed to. So the more complex English words, very, very difficult for a lot of deaf people. Oh, wow. So in Middleton School, did you go to any deaf youth clubs or anything like that? No, I can't remember, to be honest, no. And what about when you then moved to Jack Hunt School? Did you go to any kind of youth social groups? Yeah, I did then. I remember going to a deaf youth club. I went to one in London and a few in other different places. I think the teacher of the deaf kind of found them and told us where they were, and we could get a group of students together to go to various different things. But I can't remember where they were exactly. And what about PDCS? Were you involved in that? Yes, yeah, I was. I think I was invited in, and I was also asked to help with some photography, because obviously in the future I'd like to have my own business. So what did you do in PDCS? Did you meet more deaf people? Did you feel that you could create friendships there? What was that like? Did you like that experience? I'm just trying to think. I think it was August 2019. I think it was at Peterborough Hospital that I'd met someone. We played hockey near there. And I think there was lots of people. There were lots of children about, I remember. And there were some deaf and some hearing, like a mixture. I remember it being quite a good experience. I'd met, you know, more deaf children and young people. We did climbing and hockey and football. And then when I was older, they asked me to come and take pictures of things. I took pictures of all the climbing walls and the football, and it was brilliant. So it must have been really interesting. So for you, moving from Africa where there's been no support and not kind of aware of deafness at all, coming to a situation like that where there are deaf people around and communicating, was that experience with PDCS, did you feel like you fit in, like you were involved and you were able to engage then? Yeah, I mean, I think PDCS really encouraged more deaf people to come to improve their communication and have good experiences. You know, and I think it doesn't matter whether you were born deaf or whether you were born hearing and became deaf. And they were kind of encouraging for the future that you can have jobs, and also there were some hearing people there that wanted to learn sign language as well, which was great. And I think that was back in 2019, yeah, when I did that with PDCS. And I think that encouragement of not only having deaf, but having hearing people there as well, and encouraging everyone to join in together and teaching them how to communicate through sign language. I think that would be really, really good to have more of that mixture. Was your school, was it a special school or was it mainstream school? I think it was mainstream, yeah. Oh, so there were both deaf people and hearing people there. Yeah, there was a mixture. So how was that? What was that like? I mean, when I was in classes, there were some hearing people that would try to communicate with me, and they'd use paper and pens and write things down, or, you know, they might use their phone even to show me things. And then I could look and write a response, or, you know, write a response on the phone. Sometimes I could use my CSW or my interpreter and ask them to relay some of the conversation, and it would go back to the other student and we'd have a discussion that way. But it's definitely been more difficult, you know, with hearing people that don't know any sign language, because we can't communicate directly. And sometimes people would ask my sister in school, so my sister would sort of help me to interpret the conversation. So my friend might ask my sister something and she'd then be able to ask me. But yeah, it has been challenging with hearing people. So sometimes with deaf young people in school, they might feel like they've been bullied or discriminated against. Did you ever have that? No, not at all. Oh, that's brilliant. So really, it was quite a good experience. Yeah, I mean, I think at Jack Hunt, they were very strict anti-bullying. So I don't think I ever faced any kind of discrimination. Definitely not about my race either, which was good. Oh, brilliant. That sounds like a really good experience for you. So do you feel like it's really important to have lots of deaf people or deaf peers in school? Because when you're the only deaf one, you might not have anybody there. So do you think it's important to have other deaf students, and why? Yeah, I mean, I think if you don't have any deaf students and, you know, you might feel very, very isolated, you know, might feel, what's the point? Why am I growing up this isolated? And I mean, when I moved to the UK and I had no idea about being deaf, I thought, you know, I might have been the first person that was deaf. I hadn't ever met any other deaf people in the world. So they might find that very, very difficult if they don't have deaf peers. You know, how would I learn about topics? How will I find a job in the future? You know, there was definitely those fears about my life going forwards. But if more hearing people had that kind of awareness, you know, then maybe the problems that deaf people do have in face, maybe people would be able to help more with that. So I'm not sure the sign overcome, but I think when deaf people grow up, you know, they have to overcome a lot of barriers to find that success or achieve getting a job, meet boyfriends, girlfriends, or, you know, have families, things like that. So I think really meeting those other deaf people and learning, you know, that other people are having those shared experiences as well, it's vital. So, for example, if you knew someone that had just moved here to the UK, maybe they've come from Africa and they were deaf and they didn't know anything, they didn't know anybody here, they didn't know about deafness, how would you support them? What do you think would be useful? So if someone was in the same situation that I was, they just moved to the UK, they didn't know anybody, I think having books about how to sign, explaining about deafness, maybe hearing problems, how you might have become deaf, you know, teaching that person what it means, helping them understand deafness. I think as well, the parents should have that responsibility for teaching the child as well. So, for example, if someone was organising a group for new families who have moved here, why do you think that it might be good for them to have that advice and support? That's really difficult to explain. So, for example, do you think it might be useful to them for them to meet other deaf people who have had similar experiences? Do you think it might help their confidence and maybe reduce their isolation of becoming more aware? Yeah, I mean, I think if you had kind of dates organised so that deaf people could meet other deaf people, go to different places like out for coffee or out socialising, or even, going to the hospital and explaining to the people that they're deaf and, meeting other people. I think they have a lot of kind of community groups, maybe more in London, where deaf people can meet lots of other deaf people. And obviously other areas in the UK have it. I think that would really help people learn better. You'd learn more about the community, meet other deaf people and friends, and you'd be able to have more information available to you, which would help. So what has your experience been like in the doctors, hospitals? Do you think they've been deaf aware or not? I mean, when I was growing up, my mum always took me to the hospital. I used to have checkups quite regularly. And when the doctor would explain something to the interpreter, they would kind of translate it to me, but quite often I didn't really understand what they were talking about or what they were saying. And when I got older, I then had to kind of work with the interpreter about hearing aids, and I didn't know what an implant was either. So I had to ask the interpreter for, more information about what was going on. And they said, that it would help you to become hearing and things like this. So while they had that discussion with my parents about, using an implant continually and not taking it out, I was then able to kind of be involved in that discussion to say, yeah, okay, let's give it a try. But unfortunately, they weren't for me. Yeah, that is a shame. So what is it you're doing now? At the moment, I'm studying photography. Ah, brilliant. Is that in college? Yeah. I mean, it's in college at the moment, and I love watching football on TV, and I love seeing, all the cameras around the football stadium and how they're, filming it all, taking the pictures on the pitch. And when I was younger, I thought I might like to join the football team, but now it'd be brilliant to join like the team of photographers taking pictures of footballs or different sports. And I'd love to learn about, how to improve the photography skills, what looks good. And I love researching, different photographers as well. And, I'd like to learn more about business as well and how to set up my own photography business, about costs and everything. Because at the moment I'm level 3. Oh, wow. That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's really important, especially at the moment. When I started college in 2015, it was very, very different. It was difficult and very different from Jack Hunt School. I mean, college, you have to do a lot of researching yourself. You have to do a lot of practical work, photographing people, filling out forms and essays, questionnaires to create ideas. And then, your final paper and your final piece. So I think from 2015 to 2017, I really, really, really struggled with that. I found it very difficult. And I felt that the CSWs weren't kind of able to explain in full what the teacher was saying, or they'd kind of tell me what the teacher was saying, but not any more kind of breakdown than that. And I remember always getting things in last minute and struggling with research or finding ideas or surveys and things like that. So that was really difficult. And then from 2018 onwards, I finally understood, we worked with different CSWs, and I got more in-depth explanations about how to do the research and how to get people's ideas and understanding. And I finally thought, oh, brilliant, I understand. And, that has really, really improved my confidence. Oh, brilliant. So do you feel that your course tutor is deaf aware? Yeah, I think I've got 2 at the moment, and they're deaf aware. Previously I've not had teachers that are, but at the moment I do. And are there other deaf students in the class? No, just me. Oh, wow. There used to be a student with me called Sydney, but she's moved now. But yeah, I'm the only one there at the moment now in the college. Wow, so do you feel lonely there, or... No, I mean, I'm fine there at the moment. I know that some deaf people aren't interested in photography. They've got different interests, and, they might be doing cooking or mechanics and other things like that. But it's just not linked to photography. That's fine. I know that, I'm focusing on my work, and I'm focusing for my job in the future, that I want to become a photographer. So, I've got to focus on the work, and then I can find a job. I'd like a really proper professional job, so I know I need to focus, and, I don't mind being the only one. Oh, that's interesting. So, in the future, you said you'd like to become a photographer. So, for example, how do you make sure that you can overcome communication barriers in the future, out there in the world? How can you make sure that the communication's there? So I think, I am finding level 3s quite difficult because there's a lot of English, and it's kind of difficult to access, but finally my English is starting to improve now. So I've been able to access that. So I think, if you're deaf and you really, really want to be a photographer, level 3 is hard, because, like the teacher says, you have to pass level 2 to get up to level 3. Because if you don't have your level 2 English and maths, then you can't, you have to do it again and again until you pass. And you just have to repeat it. But I was very, very determined that in the future I do want to become a photographer. And I've, researched a lot of information and found a lot out that was really difficult. But if you're deaf and you really, really want something, you should stick with it until you achieve it. Because I've managed to get from level 2 to level 3. Brilliant. So I just wanted to ask, so in the future, maybe, for example, if you've been booked as a photographer to go to a wedding, how would you communicate with them? So I think one thing that's really important is creating a website of your business and knowing, what you do, but putting on there that I'm deaf, so that when somebody books the person, they know that they're deaf, and so we can kind of use different methods of communication. So I could either bring an interpreter with me or, rely on writing things down. But I think putting it on the website, making it known to the people that are hiring me that I'm deaf, it might kind of help them to understand what to expect when I do arrive, with an interpreter or something, and I can set everything up, but I can explain what I need through the interpreter. So I think it'd be best to probably put it out there on the website. Oh, that's brilliant. I think you're probably a really good role model for the young people watching you and maybe having aspirations that are similar to yours in the future. Maybe younger people wanting to be a photographer. Maybe it will give them kind of confidence that they can do it and that they can keep going. And hopefully, in the future, we'll have lots of, young deaf people growing up to being really successful and positive. So thank you very much. That's amazing. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's important for a lot of, deaf people. Maybe they're having CSWs or they're not feeling very confident and they've got hopes of the future. I think deaf people should feel motivated, and not left out, and to video or, do various different things and be involved in media. I think you should get involved if that's what interests you, like photography does for me. Do you know what I mean? I'd like more opportunities out there and to meet lots of other deaf people to chat with who have similar interests. And I think that would raise deaf awareness. So that is something I do want, you know, because otherwise I can't really talk to anybody about my interests. Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you. And so if there's people watching you now, what's the one message that you'd like other deaf young people to take away from this interview? You know, one really important thought for them. I think it doesn't matter what barriers you face, what difficulties you have, just do your best. Don't look back and keep looking forward to the future and live in the present, and then it will help you achieve your future goals. I think also really trying to stay positive and not focusing on the negativity. It will help, you know, it'll improve your life and definitely increase your happiness, to try and stay focused and positive about the future, not negative. And don't listen to people telling you what you can and can't do. You know, it's your life, you're independent, you've got rights. And to just focus on your future and forget what people are saying, asking you why you're doing things or giving you negativity in your life. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming to the interview today. It was lovely to chat with you, and hopefully you've enjoyed doing it as well. Thank you.